with all of this talk of identity, what does that really mean to not have an identity? What are the Packers truly searching for, and how do they find it? We discuss that with our pal Lily Zhao for a Thursday edition of Zhao You Doing. Let's go.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. And this Thursday edition of Zhao You Doing is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. This idea of identity, what does that mean? What does it really mean? Matt LaFleur was asked earlier this week, and he gave an answer that I thought was excellent. It was revealing and insightful and thoughtful, and it seems like this is something that, at the very least, he has thought about in advance. This is something that they actually do care about, because the question was framed, and I thought, very, very well from Bill Huber from SI, that does this actually matter? Is it something that is real, or are we just making it up? Is this a media thing? Here's what Matt LaFleur said.
I think that there are certain areas where, you want to be able to hang your hat on something, right? And have, whether it's go-to players or plays that you can go to in tough times that you know that you got a pretty good chance to have success with. I always look at identity more of your style of play. And are you doing all the little things? Are you straining? Are you making the extra blocks? Are you pushing piles? Are you finishing forward on runs? Scheme is scheme to me. And as long as you have a marriage between your run game and your pass game, and formationally that you have plays that at least come off the same looks, that is all part of that identity. And I think that's something that we always work hard to do. Unfortunately, I think everything kind of gets magnified when you're not having success. And that's just the nature of it. And certainly I think we did some good things. I think there's a lot of things that we can do a hell of a lot better. And I think it all starts with the detail. And we had a really long team meeting today and kind of laid out everything for our guys, areas where we have plays dialed up against the premier looks that exactly what you want them for, and we're getting the bare minimum, and sometimes not even getting a positive play at all.
And so when we think about identity, and this is something I wrote about yesterday over at The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, we have to start with not who they are. Who are they trying to be? And when Matt LaFleur says scheme is the scheme, they're running the stuff. They're doing the Matt LaFleur thing. We heard him say they wanted to do more under center. That gets the run game going. That allows you to get your play action game going, because their play action game, especially in the Shanahan tree offense, is better from under center. But that didn't result in execution necessarily. And that is the key. So they want to be the team that they've been. They haven't quite got all the dials right. They haven't quite found that Goldilocks zone. Shout out Nathaniel Hackett, the gold zone. They haven't found the Goldilocks zone right. Part of that is their best players are not contributing. You lose David Bakhtiari. Elton Jenkins is hurt. He comes back. Okay, that's great. Zach Thomas hurt. John Runyon Jr. is hurt. They're playing, but they're hurt. So it's just a different thing. Like, it can't look like it did in 2020 because you don't have the MVP at quarterback. You don't have the best receiver in the league. You don't have a top 3 offensive line that can do run or pass. You don't have a 3-headed monster in the backfield with your running backs. And so that creates problems. It's not that you're not doing what you want. It's that you're not doing it how you want, which is to say you're not executing. And so for Matt LaFleur, his point here is if we just executed better, if we played a little bit harder, if we maximized effort, if the details were on point, it would be a lot more apparent what the identity of this team was. Unfortunately, right now, the identity is inconsistency. And that can change, of course, but they need their best guys. They need Aaron Jones. When you don't have, he is supposed to be one of the engines of this team. Think of how different it looked in the first half against the Bears. The one drive that they moved the ball up and down the field, Aaron Jones was the focal point. They score a touchdown. Then they do nothing. Aaron Jones gets 0 touches, and then in the second half, all of a sudden, he is the focal point of the offense again, and you kill the Bears. Great. Terrific. So it's really nice to have him. What happened last year? The Packers, it felt like we had the same sort of discussion. What was their identity? And then in week 10, Christian Watson breaks out, and now the whole offense is designed around what he can do. And this was a top 8-ish offense the rest of the way with all of the problems. Now, it is interesting. I looked it up. Through 5 games, Jordan Love has almost to the decimal point the same EPA per play as Aaron Rodgers. It's 0.038 versus 0.039. That was Rodgers' EPA per play is 1/1000th of a point higher than Jordan Love's through 5 games. So just so we're understanding here, in terms of pure efficiency and productivity, we're talking about on a per play basis, the same amount of value. But this team changed when Christian Watson got more involved. Not unlike what happened on Monday night. You create an explosive and you change what you can do with this team. Now, I think a fully healthy Christian Watson scores rather than being a 77-yard play. It's an 85-yard play. I also don't think the penalty makes sense. You personal foul penalty inside the 10. You save a touchdown with a horse collar tackle. You know, I don't agree with Mike Florio very often, but he said on a play like that, you should be awarded a touchdown. If you prevent a touchdown with a horse collar tackle, it should be a touchdown, much like a clear path foul in the NBA. I don't know about that, but I do think a personal foul penalty inside the 10 should be automatic first down at the 1st and goal. At the 1, I've always said this. This is not but it helps the Packers thing. No, this is a stupid thing. Personal foul, and by the way, personal foul should always count. There's no such thing as offsetting penalties if one of them is a personal foul. This is why you have different degrees. Like a 5-yard penalty and a 15-yard penalty. First of all, just do the math. Second of all, there's no reason that the personal foul should not be enforced because the other team committed a penalty that is considered significantly less serious. Okay, soapbox over. He needs to be a bigger part of this offense moving forward. He is your alpha number 1. And if he wants to do that, he can't get mossed by Amik Robertson, who's 5'8", when you're 6'4". He had a chance to jump for that ball. He didn't. This is a trend with Christian Watson going back to college. He doesn't always go up and high point the ball in contested catch situations. He goes up, he lets it get into his body. And I think, frankly, it's because I don't know that he has supreme confidence in his hands. I don't think he has supreme confidence in his catching ability. It doesn't look like he does. And he would probably tell you that's nonsense. I'm just telling you the way it looks. So I think you can build an offense around Christian Watson. We've seen them do it. But that was with Allen Lazard, who you know is going to be in the right place at the right time all the time. And with Randall Cobb, who you know is going to be in the right place at the right time all the time. And that's with Mercedes Lewis, who can be a true sixth offensive lineman that we saw against the Raiders. You can't ask Tucker Kraft to be that. He's not. You can't ask Ben Sims or Josiah DeGuara or Luke Musgrave to be that. They're not. And so that's going to make the Packers make adjustments. They can't just throw these guys to the fire. You want them to make their mistakes. There's tons of potential in this team. Guys, the first 3 weeks, this was a top 10 offense by EPA per play. They scored 18 points in the fourth quarter against a really good defense to win a game. So it's not like there's nothing here. Right now, they are a below average team, but part of that is because they were pretty good for 3 weeks and then pretty bad for 2 weeks. And that leaves you in the middle and probably just below the middle. They're probably like the 21st best team in the league right now. And that, I think, is right where we expected them to be at this point in the season. In a month, I would hope that they're a little bit further along because you get some development from Jaden Reed. He gets more comfortable. Jordan Love gets more comfortable. Luke Musgrave gets more comfortable. But you have to get your best guys. Christian Watson has to be a dude. If you want to be a dude, you got to be a dude. You got to be a dude. Aaron Jones got to be healthy. And this offense looks a lot different. It looks like what we thought it was going to look like. So it's players, not plays. It's players, not plays. And Matt LaFleur knows that. He said that. So I'm not worried that they have some true identity crisis, but they do have to find a way to feed the ball more to Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Aaron Jones, assuming those guys are healthy. It can't be Patrick Taylor getting more targets in the first half than Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson combined. Can't do that. Cannot do that. And you have to be nimble enough that on a Saturday night, if you find out Aaron Jones can't go, and then Monday you got to play, that you have to be able to be nimble enough to work on the fly. And right now, are the Packers able to do that? They've got the rest of the season really to show it. And they're going to have to do it in a hurry, or the end of the season is not really going to matter that much. All right, we're going to talk to our pal Lily Zhao here coming up in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. And with the kinds of payouts that they're offering, you have no excuse to not try it. We're talking about up to 25 times your money. You put $10 in, you can win up to $250 with just a few taps. You can make picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. Plus, with quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Just pick a couple players, and Prize Picks already decides what the number is. Saquon Barkley, 60 yards. You decide if he's going to have more or less. Patrick Mahomes, passing touchdowns. You decide 2. Okay, is he going to have more or less? Prize Picks decides on the number. You decide if they produce more or less than that. It's that easy. It's that easy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for that first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. And football season is here. Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. East on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Host Anitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. Plus, get the in-depth and local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff live every Friday at 2 p.m. East or on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. The Green Bay Packers went to Las Vegas, and they did what a lot of people do when they go there. They went broke. It was an embarrassing performance, especially offensively. Jordan Love throws 3 interceptions, plays what was, for my money, his worst game as a pro. To help us decompress, to help us digest what we witnessed. Not a lot of decompressing usually when you're in Vegas. Lily Zhao from Fox 6 joins us. Lily, how you doing?
Peter, it's been a quick turnaround for us here, but still digesting what we saw on Monday night. I don't think any of us expected to see what we did see against the Raiders, and we'll dissect it in this episode. But pretty shocked by what we saw, but other than that, I'm doing well, and the house won. That's the best way to put it. The house won.
The house did in fact win, and if we're going to digest it, I think like some Pepto-Bismol probably in order here. Whatever your antacid of choice is. I was a Tums guy for a long time. Let's stay on the topic of stomach churning events. Jordan Love throws 3 interceptions, looks a little scattershot, a little scatterbrained, making easy plays difficult. And I kind of don't know what to make of what we saw here. How concerned are you about Jordan Love after the last 2 weeks?
I wouldn't say it's a concern of, is he the right guy moving forward? I think it's just, how do we put him in better positions? How do we get him just more first half ready in games? And will the addition of Aaron Jones kind of appease any of that worry? I really do think without Aaron Jones, this offense has been hard to watch. I don't know if it's play calling. I don't know if it's just plain execution, but there just really is no juice, as we like to say. And certainly, Jordan didn't play a great game. I think, on his interceptions, he tried to force it. And, you can't do that against a defense and guys that can really read a quarterback. And, I think he was staring guys down, and that he's got to improve on. But I don't think I'm at the level of concern of, he's not going to be the guy moving forward. Again, I still think that this is a learning process for him. And unfortunately for us, they're regular season games that count. But certainly a lot to be desired as they head into the bye week. They had 2 primetime showdowns, and they didn't play well in either of those. So it's hard to tell where this team goes from here.
I think it's very easy to be a prisoner of the moment and go, okay, they looked really bad in these primetime spots. Everyone's watching. You go on Twitter. Everyone is talking about it, and forget what happened the first 3 weeks of the season. And I understand that they lost that Falcons game, but the offense in the third quarter looked awesome. They won that game for 3 quarters. And then I understand they didn't play great for 3 quarters against the Saints, but then they played awesome enough to win in the fourth quarter. And of course, they beat the brakes off the Chicago Bears. If you break the season into those segments, Jordan Love is 3rd in EPA per play through the first 3 weeks and 2nd to last in the last 2 weeks. Break it out by half. It's a very similar thing. In the first half, he is basically the worst quarterback in the league this year. In the second half, he's 3rd in EPA per play. He is a really good quarterback in the second half. I don't know what to make of this. And so I'm going to give you a couple options. Okay, Lily? One of these is, it's on Jordan Love. Like, we don't have to go more than 50%, but who deserves the plurality of blame? The most of these 4. Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur, youth, inexperience, all those things, or let's what I'll call roster construction. This is a really young team, but it's not that it's just that, the kids are making the mistakes. That would be the youth. It's that they don't have those veterans, especially without Aaron Jones, to right the ship here. So of those 4, what is the most at fault for the inconsistency we've seen offensively?
Ooh, that is a good question.
It's one that they're working through right now at 1265. I have a feeling.
Right. I feel like if the Packers had an answer, there might be some sort of fix for it.
Yeah, you'd hope.
It's tough. The easy answer is it's a combination of all that. But that being said, I would say,
I think that's true, by the way. I think all of that is true.
Yeah, maybe it's the latter. Maybe it's the last one you said, just the youth. It's tough because, again, as a coach, you want to put your player in the right position. You want to call the right plays to get him comfortable. I know they wanted to commit to the run, and they showed that early on in the first quarter. And then after a while, they kind of got away from it. But Jordan Love, he's the guy on the field orchestrating the offense, didn't play well. But then there's a combination of, he could throw a good ball, but it's dropped. Or, it's not blocked well, and the play's dead. I think it's a lot of all that, but when it comes down to it, I think you need your quarterback to execute. I think you need your head coach to call the right plays. And that's kind of just been very discombobulated. So in my mind, I'm going to say the youth of it all, and that might be my answer, but I really do think it's just a convoluted thing of just a lot of stuff isn't working. And that's
the offense is convoluted right now, which is part of the problem as well. I will be honest, I expected more of Matt LaFleur. I thought, and there are still times when it looks great and he's dialing up cool concepts and getting guys wide open, and you're like, man, this is fun. In the last 2 weeks, it hasn't been that way. It's been Jordan Love is going to have to make something. happen and hasn't always been able to do it. I think we've seen him revert a little bit to what we saw his last year at Utah State. When guys aren't getting open, he doesn't trust it. So I'm just going into hero mode, and that's when you miss linebackers, you underthrow deep balls, and it turns into interceptions. What is the there is no quick fix, but what is the quickest fix for this offense? Is it just as simple as, hey, get Aaron Jones back, and this all gets much easier?
I think it's just, let's not try to be too cute. It's like, get the basic stuff down first. Execute the basic stuff, and then you can get cute. I think they try to get too cute at certain points of the game, and then I think it's happened in other games as well, where you're not even executing the baseline stuff. Get that executed. I think if you bring Aaron Jones back, you have a threat on the ground. You can utilize play action. Jordan can roll out and find guys. And that's where I think this offense might thrive. And when he's not playing hero ball, which I know quarterbacks are like, I want to put it on myself to win, but take what the defense gives you. I mean, certainly Vegas did last night with the Packers defense. But again, don't be too cute and just let's get the basic stuff down. But that being said, I feel like if you have Aaron Jones back there, and he's able to get back in the game, be it in on the ground game or in the passing game, I think that opens up so much more, because it just felt like in the first half, they guys either weren't open or they just didn't want to throw down the middle of the field. And it just was throw behind the sticks or let's try to run, and it wasn't really getting anywhere. And, of course, Max Crosby was a nightmare for the offensive line. So that's kind of where I would go with, maybe just get the basic stuff down first.
All right, more with our pal, Lily Zhao, here in just a second on Locked On Packers. Don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase handles everything from online evaluations to licensed pharmacy, medication delivery, and ongoing consultation fees. They provide 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use in the Jase case. And all it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions, doctor created and doctor recommended. This is a no-brainer. You go online, you fill out a form, and then you can get a prescription, life-saving medications right to your door. The Jase case gives you peace of mind that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure you have medication on hand. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow on the show. We've got another interview coming up for you as we finish out the bye week. We will come back next week and get you set for Packers Broncos. The Broncos play tonight, so they will actually get more rest than you would normally get. Mitigates some of the advantages that the Packers would otherwise have on a bye week facing a team with regular rest. So that's not like the greatest, but it's the schedule, and it's one of the few times that they don't have a maximal advantage in these cases. Last year, they faced a lot of rest issues. This year, no rest issues almost at all. So beggars can't be choosers on this one. It feels like they don't have the knobs modulated right. They don't have the speaker quite right in tune. Like when you buy a TV and you got to change all the settings because they're all catawampus. I feel like that's where they are right now. Like they have this really nice 70-inch, TV, 4K, all that stuff, but like it's got the factory settings, and they're like, okay, so we can't quite do this. So let's try this. Oh no, there's too much black in that. Okay. Oh no, that's too blown out. Oh, okay. That's where they're trying to calibrate all of this, because it feels like they come out against Detroit, throwing it all over the yard. Well, that wasn't the right approach. Clearly didn't work. They come out against Las Vegas. Let's run the ball. Well, that wasn't quite calibrated right. But then when they find the right calibration and it hits, you're like, oh, wait, this is great. This is really cool. This is fun. I don't know how they find that calibration. It may just be as simple as the point that we were making earlier, Lily, that you made, that this is a lot of young guys. And we're just like, there's guys running in the same area. That can't happen. Wrong routes, missed assignments, like that stuff is going to keep happening. And then that leads us to this, kind of icky question, Lily. And that is like, have the Packers with this youth plan, which I was all about, put themselves in a position where they're not getting a good read on Jordan Love. Like it is really hard for me to say through 5 games that they've put him in a position to succeed. And if that's the case, then his struggles shouldn't be surprising. And maybe they aren't to what's happening, the coaches in the front office. Do you feel like you've gotten a good evaluation for what he is given his surroundings over the first couple of games?
I certainly think if, let's say you're a Brock Purdy. If Jordan Love is a Brock Purdy and you plug him into a system where you have established players, you have a great play caller, you have a defense that's just going to win you ball games, and you plug a young kid in there, that kid's going to succeed. Not saying that that's not the case here in Green Bay, but it's a lot different. I mean, you have guys who are in their first year of football in the NFL. You guys who are in their second year, and they're considered veterans in the room. And then you have a defense which is older and more established, but they've also struggled. And, maybe the play calling could be better for a young quarterback, but not saying the product in Green Bay isn't going to let Jordan Love succeed. But you're right. There's to a point where if you plug him into a team with maybe established veterans, like if Devontae Adams was still there, if Alan Lazard or Randall Cobb, those guys are still there to help him along and he had chemistry with them prior, you might see a different sort of aerial attack or maybe a different sort of level of comfort. But that being said, that's not what's happening with the Packers. They have a young team, and I think because of that, maybe this is just the year where they figure things out together, and then maybe year 2 is the year where they grow together and say, we're going to make that leap. But I think fans still need to be patient and say, because Jordan's in the situation that he is in, not saying it's a bad one, but you need to be more patient because of the young pieces around him.
And maybe the Packers are. Maybe this is a lot of noise. By the way, when you hear Matt LaFleur talk about Jordan Love, it's almost always in glowing terms. And so I feel like they're probably more patient internally than we are externally, for a lot of different reasons. Let's turn our attention now to Joe Barry, who was the target of a lot of fans' ire on Monday night. Preston Smith in coverage against Devontae Adams. I get that is an easy stalking horse. We've talked about this before, though, Lily. You look up at the final numbers, like 4.4 yards per play. It's not like they got gashed. 17 points. That's kind of what I expected them to score. I just thought the Packers would get to like 24, and they didn't. What did you come away with thinking about this defense on Monday night?
I thought that, there were certain plays, like you pointed out, Preston going up one-on-one with Tay, which, I mean, Tay's going to win 9 times out of 10. And then that touchdown to Jacoby Myers, where the guys were so far off the ball, and, the slant was coming to to Jacoby Myers, and you knew that was going to be an easy gimme touchdown because they literally took what the defense gave them and they scored a touchdown. Outside of those plays, I thought the pressure on third down specifically was great. They were able to get to Jimmy G a couple times. It was encouraging in that fact that we knew the ground game for the Raiders wasn't good and they didn't get run all over by Josh Jacobs. Devontae Adams, it kind of took him out of the game per se, until his plays late in that drive led to that Josh Jacobs touchdown. But he wasn't the big X factor that I think we were kind of all anticipating it to be. But I know Jair Alexander made those comments afterwards saying, we really are going to take this on our shoulders to say we have to really limit opponents because our offense is still young and they're still learning. So I was encouraged by what I saw because they weren't thoroughly dominated. That being said, I know they gave their offense a lot of opportunities and they couldn't cash in. So they can only do so much, right? Outside of scoring a touchdown on their own end. But outside of the Preston Smith one-on-one and how they line up for that first touchdown that the Raiders scored, I was encouraged, I will say.
Yeah, that is the definition of damning with faint praise. They didn't get dominated, so that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And Frank, like they did more than not get dominated. But I understand totally your perspective. This is a trend with Joe Barry, where during the game you're tearing your hair out, and you look at the box score at the end, and you're sort of like, yeah, they were fine. They really were fine, and then that seems to be where we are with them right now. As we wind down here and look toward the bye week, if there's one thing that you think, okay, they need to work on this, or they need to get this player back, or find a way to incorporate this guy, or whatever it is, if there's one thing where you're like, okay, if they can get this going a little bit, or make this tweak get a little bit better here, they can capture some of what we saw early in the season and even improve on it. What is that thing?
I feel like Matt LaFleur would answer this better if he knew, right? He mentioned they have to find some sort of jumpstart to this because they've been thoroughly outbeaten in the first half in their last 3 games, 54-6.
It's crazy.
Talked about it. It's mind-boggling. But the fact that they're still able to be in games, albeit their opponents are not the caliber of the Niners or the Eagles, etc., they still give themselves a chance. But I really do think it all comes down to, I shouldn't say it all comes down to, but I feel like we keep harping on about Aaron Jones. I mean, if you saw his contributions with the team against the Bears and just how well they looked when he was on the field with them, I mean, that just adds a level of juice and excitement to your offense that it's kind of lacking, because outside of Aaron Jones, who else can you really bring in offensively to say, that guy is going to give us a spark that we desperately need to get off to a fast start? I mean, it's hard to say anybody but Aaron. So I think if they can get his hamstring back to close to 100% and he's there with the team for the stretch run, that opens up the possibilities of what this offense can do. And
they face a historically bad defense coming out of the bye. Not just bad like the Raiders are, but historically bad. And so if they can't, with Aaron Jones healthy and everyone else healthy theoretically and an extra week to prepare, if they can't score on that defense, then we start to get, I think, a little more nervous about all of this. Lily, we will talk to you next week. Talk to you then.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. Thanks to Lily for joining the show. Always great to talk to her. Always better to talk about a win, but we're not in charge of that. Back tomorrow. Much more here on Locked On Packers as we get you set for next week's game. Though this week we're kind of taking a little bit of a breather, doing a self-scout, self-eval, all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, you can do that on our Locked On Packers YouTube page, so you can stay Locked On Packers.